Today, I'm going to show you how to propagate a jade plant from a branch or a stem cutting. I'll share with you step by step how to successfully root your jade cutting and go over what not to do along the way. Bonus, I'll show you the progress of my current jade propagation projects so you'll know exactly what to expect. There are some important and beneficial things to consider before taking a cutting. You have to keep these growth rings in mind when you're cutting your jade plant. These are where the roots are going to come out. So if I think about how I'm going to stick this cutting into the soil, I'm going to need to make sure that I keep enough growth rings on it so that the roots will come out and it has plenty of nodes and options to propagate successfully. Just to show you an example, this is a jade minima that I propagated about a couple months ago. And you can see what I'm talking about. On the growth rings, where the nodes are is where the roots come out. So you really have to keep in mind planting enough of those, because sometimes the more you have, the quicker it'll propagate and the more successful you will be. There's a difference between a stem and a branch cutting. A stem is usually the main trunk-like portion of the plant. So if I took a cut here, which I'm going to in a moment, that would be a stem cutting. Now, if I took a cutting off of this branch, which I'm going to go ahead and do now, that's a branch. It's a smaller portion of the plant, and look at that, I got two right there. Stem cuttings are the quickest way to get yourself a really established jade plant, and they're also a little more rare because not everybody's willing to part with a cut like that. And the reason you might take a stem cutting is you want to keep your current plant short and stubby. Maybe you're looking for a thicker trunk. So by taking stem cuttings, what you're doing is really focusing on more compact growth coming out of there, and that's going to help the trunk get thicker. A lot of times when I'm looking for a good branch cutting from a jade plant to propagate, I like to look for branches that are going downward. And the reason I do that is because when they head down, it's not usually contributing to the shape of the jade plant that I want. On this particular ogre ear jade, I have this one that's heading down, and I'm just going to take it right here because these two branches are pointing up. They're going to grow upwards, and I'm going to take it right there. Another technique that I'll look to do when I'm taking cuttings of my jade plant is trying to keep the plant balanced and flat. As you can see with this plant, there's a few stems that are really kind of growing above the rest, and I'd rather it grow out more bushy or flat. So if you're looking to shape your jade plant like that, you can take some cuttings like this to kind of balance it out. So I'm taking these long cuttings so that I have more of an even canopy here on top. Once you have your cutting, you're probably ready to get it in the ground and start the rooting process. Well, I would suggest before you do that, you let the cutting sit out a few days. And the reason why is we want this end to callus. You can see that the end right now is green because I just took a fresh cut. Cuttings that I took about a week ago have a brown calloused end, so it's dried out. And the reason I want to let it callus is that if you have a fresh cutting that's green like that and you put it into wet, moist dirt right away, then there's a decent chance that your jade plant is going to rot and it's not going to propagate successfully, and all that effort you put in is to waste. If you don't want to wait for your cutting to callus over and you want to plant it right away, even the day that you took the cutting, I'm going to show you a successful method on how to do that. Size matters when it comes to pots. You'll want to choose the right size pot depending on the size of your jade cutting. If you have a smaller cutting, you'll have a smaller pot. If you have a larger cutting, you'll need a larger pot or container. You'll also want to make sure that you have the right type of soil. I have some succulent soil here that's from a big box store. And then I have my own mix, which is mostly coco coir and perlite. And what they both have in common is that water drains easily through it and they dry out rather quickly. And that's really important when you're propagating jade plants. I have a few jade cuttings here that have calloused. I like to clean the stem up a little bit so I have plenty of room for it to go into the soil. I'm just gonna push it in there. You can make a hole if you'd like, if that's easier. And then I'll see how that is. I'll just kind of put a little around there, and then I'm gonna get it kind of snug in there. So it's in there fairly snug. That's gonna hold just fine. I'll go ahead and take leaves like this off because they're just kind of a little damaged. I'd like to just keep nice, fresh, new, healthy growth on there. When I fill, I make sure I have a little gap from the top of the pot. And something to keep in mind is when you water this, it's going to compress down in there, you know? And don't worry if it's not super, like if it's a little wiggly, that's because there's no roots, and that will change very quickly once it starts rooting. I mentioned before that you can plant succulent cuttings the day or right after you cut them, and the process is very similar. I will poke a hole, put this big guy in there, and kind of shove him down in there, get them locked in. Good. If you've planted a fresh cutting right away, make sure that you've planted it into dry soil. Why? Because if it's damp, the bottom where the cutting is fresh is more likely to rot. Then you're not going to want to water it for at least a week. And the reason why is because if you water it too soon and the callus hasn't formed underneath the soil there, it could rot as well. So you have to keep those in mind, but this method works just fine for me. By planting your cuttings after they've calloused, you're a little bit better off in my opinion because one, you can water it sooner. There's more margin of error if it stays wet for too long. If you'd like to increase your odds of success, you can use rooting hormone. I don't really use it that much with jade plants because they already propagate so easy. But if you do it, you know, what I'll do is I'll just kind of dip it in to this right here. Or this is also a liquid version I will use that is very successful. And I already pre-did my hole there, right? Because if I just push it into the soil, it's all gonna come right back up. So I've pre-made the hole, locked in there pretty well. And that's how I use the rooting hormone. When it comes to watering your jade plant cuttings, less is more. No matter what method you use when you're planting your jade plant cutting, you don't need to water it for a while. You can wait a week, and when you water it, let it dry out. You don't want to keep it wet all the time because again, that could cause rot. When propagating jade plants, I avoid giving them too much direct sunlight right away. I'll usually keep them in a spot with good indirect light and transition them gradually. To give you an idea on how long it will take your jade plant to root, I planted these about a week and a half ago. And when I pull this one out, you can see, if I'm very gentle, I already knocked a root off, but there's roots starting right there. And let's see if I pull another one out. Yeah, see there's little roots starting to come. And it goes pretty fast. You just need to be patient because nothing's immediate. Please feel free to leave a comment about your jade plant propagation process, and thank you for watching.